क्या आपने कभी सोचा है जिन कंपनीज के बारे में हम दिन रात सुनते हैं, पढ़ते हैं, उनका शेयर प्राइस कैसे ऊपर जाता है, कैसे नीचे जाता है? Then you are at the right place. You are at Groww TV. On the expert seat today, we have Mr. Shailesh Kanani, who's been into the world of finance and equity research for the last 2 decades. Currently, he is employed at Centrum Broking, analyzing the bioenergy and mid-cap bank segment. We'll hear all about the business, the financials, the management, the growth prospects from the expert himself.
So today, I guess we are here to talk about Praj Industries, right?
Generally people know about the HDFCs and the Reliance and the TCSs and the Infosys of the world.
Right.
But it's more of a different sector, different company, since you've been covering Praj for quite some time now. So want to get your perspective on the business model, the company.
Sure. So Praj basically on the listed front is one of the only companies which is a pure play on bioenergy as a theme, right? Which has been the focus of the government. Predominantly 3 पार्ट हैं इनके बिजनेस के. एक है बायोएनर्जी सेगमेंट, सेकेंड है उनका इंजीनियरिंग डिवीजन एंड तीसरा पार्ट है HPS विच इज़ द हाई प्योरिटी सिस्टम्स. तो बायोएनर्जी सेगमेंट जो है वो अधिकतम सबसे बड़ा शेयर है रेवेन्यू में और ऑर्डर बुक में भी. सो इट कॉन्ट्रीब्यूट्स नियरली 70% ऑफ द टोटल रेवेन्यूज. And engineering division contributes around say 20 to 25%, and very small portion is coming from the high purity segment, which is around 4 to 5%. Talking about the bioenergy segment, the primary molecule which they do is ethanol, which is used in the ethanol blending program. आपने कई बार पेपर में पढ़ा होगा कि ethanol blending program के हम we have reached 15%, and next year we are going to reach around 20%. And the idea is that we increase the ethanol blending in other products as well, other molecules as well, in diesel. तो आइडिया ये भी है कि हम जाके डीजल में ब्लेंडिंग भी करें, which is say in next 2 to 3 years. So that will create another set of opportunities for Praj. Apart from ethanol blending program, जो दूसरी opportunities है बायोएनर्जी में, वो है 2G ethanol, वो है SAF, which is sustainable aviation fuel. तो basic difference between 1G ethanol and 2G ethanol is that 1G ethanol का जो feed stock रहता है उसमें सुक्रोज कंटेंट रहता है. 2G ethanol is using as a feedstock basically waste, be it an agriculture residue or a forest residue, जहाँ पे sucrose content नहीं है. But using technology, we derive sucrose, we then extract ethanol. So that process is a little expensive. तो इसलिए उसने अभी तक commercial operation नहीं हुआ है. Ethanol 2G plants इतने हैं नहीं इंडिया में. But however, if you see numbers, there are around 4 ethanol 2G plants in India, and out of that, 3 प्राज कर रही है, एक कंप्लीट हो चुका है एंड 2 आर अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन. सो दैट इज द काइंड ऑफ बायोएनर्जी डोमिनेंस प्राज हैज.
So HPCL I think is one of the companies जिसके साथ प्राज ने they set up a plant.
Right.
And so इसमें just to understand HPCL जैसी बड़ी company, if they are putting their resources, they are putting their time and effort and doing capex for 2G ethanol blending, so do we think that this is going to be the chances of success increase with that?
Yeah, so जैसे मैंने बताया 3 प्लांट्स है, एक HPCL के साथ है, एक IOCL के साथ भी है. प्लांट्स OMCs के साथ ही है प्राज के जो वो डेवलप कर रहे हैं. The idea is that to make it commercially viable. See again, गवर्नमेंट का फोकस ये भी है कि if we are creating bioenergy, right, the pressure of generating the returns for that asset owner should not be dependent only on one molecule. मतलब अगर इथेनॉल प्लांट है, 2G इथेनॉल प्लांट है, तो खाली 2G इथेनॉल शुड नॉट बी द रेवेन्यू ड्राइवर. जो को प्रोडक्ट्स, बाई प्रोडक्ट्स निकल रहे हैं प्लांट में से, उसको भी यूज किया जाए एंड उसकी भी रेवेन्यू जनरेशन हो प्लांट एसेट ओनर के लिए, ताकि क्या हो, जो कोर मॉलिक्यूल है दैट इज द 2G प्लांट, वो ज्यादा एक्सपेंसिव ना हो जाए सिटीजन्स के लिए, मासेस के लिए, एंड देन द एसेट इटसेल्फ इज सस्टेनेबल फॉर अ लॉन्गर टर्म. सो बेसिक आइडिया वही है. Sure. And to your question, whether this will become a trend going ahead, it will become, but as I said, it will take 3 to 5 years. There are certain parts which needs to be addressed. जैसे एक मैंने बताया कि 2G ethanol plants are far more expensive than a 1G ethanol plant. So to become it, make it more viable, to ensure that private capex आए, it will take some time.
Sure. sales were down roughly 6-7 odd percent, but margins were at an all-time high. So generally, when we hear कि margins are directly correlated to your sales, but यहाँ पे I think the EBITDA margins increased to roughly 13-14 odd percent, but net sales reduced by 6-7%. Three reasons, if I ask you, that margins expanded even though sales had fallen.
तो ये क्वार्टर का जो रिजल्ट्स था वो एक रिफ्लेक्शन था लास्ट ईयर जो कपल ऑफ डेवलपमेंट्स हुए थे. आपको समझना पड़ेगा कि ये चीज लास्ट ईयर FCI राइस वाज काइंड ऑफ नॉट अलाउड टू यूज फॉर इथेनॉल प्रोडक्शन. एक उसका इम्पैक्ट प्राज पे आया इन टर्म्स ऑफ ऑर्डर इनफ्लो, बिकॉज 1G इथेनॉल ऑर्डर इनफ्लो इज अ मेजर शेयर इन द ओवरऑल ऑर्डर इनफ्लो फॉर प्राज. तो उसमें उनको एक झटका लगा जहाँ पे थोड़ा ऑर्डर इनफ्लो स्लो डाउन हुआ. सेकेंडली, बाय ईयर एंड, दैट इज से नवंबर दिसंबर, शुगर केन का यूटिलाइजेशन फॉर डिफरेंट रूट्स फॉर प्रोडक्शन ऑफ इथेनॉल, वहाँ पे भी एक रोक लगा दी गई. तो वो दो कारण थे कि आपका जो ऑर्डर बुकिंग था वो थोड़ा एक बैक सीट पे लिया, राइट. सो उसके हिसाब से आपने थोड़ा रेवेन्यू में डिक्लाइन देखा. तो इन द सेकेंड पार्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चन इज कि हाउ डिड दे वर एबल टू इम्प्रूव देयर मार्जिन्स. कि व्हाट हैज हैपेंड इज दैट इन लास्ट 12 to 15 months, the performance on the international order booking has improved a lot. So if I give you some numbers, in FY24, they have seen a jump of around 77% in order inflow on the international front.
Okay.
And now what is the benefit out of it? आप जो international orders लेते हो वो आपको तकरीबन 500 से 600 बिप्स ज़्यादा मार्जिन वाले हैं vis-a-vis your domestic orders.
Okay.
Because those are predominantly on the engineering side, which gets higher margins. तो आपका जो revenue mix है वो धीरे change हो रहा है, which is a reflection of your order book mix change. So those were the reasons why there is a dichotomy in the terms of numbers where your revenue is under pressure, but your margins are improving. Resultantly, the earnings growth is there.
Sure. So just a follow-up question on this. So currently what we saw that exports are roughly 15 to 20 odd percent. But the management has guided that going ahead in the next 3 to 5 years, they want to have a 50-50 revenue split between domestic as well as exports. Now, reasons are obvious, as you said, that 500 bips ka gap hai. So, what are some of the 2 things or 3 things or partnership collaborations that would be required so that the company achieve kar paye ye revenue mix ka target over the next 3 to 5 years?
Right. So 2-3 things in this. One you highlighted is कि 15 to 20% जो है वो revenue international से आ रहा है. But revenue would be a reflection of the existing order book. And if we see currently, nearly 1/3, एक तिहाई जो है order book international से आ रहा है. This revenue share will keep on increasing, which is a reflection of the order book, right? Now, why the company is targeting 50-50, as you rightly said, because of better margins. But how they achieve that is that they have seen a very good order inquiry pipeline, and resultantly they have done capex as well. So they are optimistic on that कि जो नया capex किया है उन्होंने एक मैंगलोर में एक नई फैसिलिटी डाली है in which is catering to oil and gas segment, which they believe will generate good amount of revenue in times to come. That facility is expected to get operational by second half. Second half में वो ऑपरेशन चालू हो जाएंगे and revenue generate करना चालू हो जाएंगे, which they are expecting to lead to jump on the international front. Similarly, on the tie-up front, Praj has always been a company which has collaborations with international reputed players. To give you some example, on SAF front, they have tie-up with a French company named Athens. Similarly, in SAF, they have a tie-up with Gevo as well, on the which is a company based out of US. So they have done tie-up on various fronts, not only be it on SAF, be it CBG as a technology, and that has helped them to grow. And incrementally, they are banking on that. Another feature of international orders is that they are seeing very good traction from the Brazil segment. अगर आप उनका एनुअल रिपोर्ट पढ़ें और देखें तो ब्राज़ील में उन्होंने पहला और जो ऑर्डर मिला था वो FY22 में था, एक पूरा स्मॉल ऑर्डर ऑन इथेनॉल फ्रंट of 60 KLPD. Now that order has led, that execution is completed, and in FY24 annual report, उन्होंने बताया है कि they have achieved, received an order of around 660 KLPD, which is a big order. And incrementally the order pipeline, जो inquiry आ रही है ब्राज़ील से, वो भी encouraging है. So those few factors are giving them the confidence that they will reach 50-50. But again, this is not a near-term target to reach 50-50 in terms of domestic and international revenues. ये करते करते I think they would need at least 5-6 years. FY30 is where I think they are targeting.
They are targeting. Sure. So any other apart from the fact that 500 bips जो आपने बोला international business में approximately उतना margin expansion है, are there any other reasons also why they want to target international business, or it's just pure play margin front? Any specific reason?
Other is that that they would like to diversify their business model as well, right? Predominantly, what has happened in last 3 to 4 years, domestic order inflow has kind of dominated, right? It has taken the lion's share and it has kind of been the major driver of growth, right? As they grow in size, currently, say if I can give you some numbers again, they are roughly around 1,000 crores in terms of revenue, say 3 to 4 years back. Currently, they are clocking nearly 3,500 crores. So there is a 3.5 jump. Now their target is to reach say around 9 to 10,000 by 2030. They would need to have more products offering. They would need to tap more geographies. अलग-अलग geographies में they would like to kind of get orders from revenue from. So that is the basic idea. So आप अगर ऐसे देखा जाए 10,000 करोड़ अगर वो टारगेट कर रहे हैं FY30 में and they get 50% from domestic, still it would be 5,000 crores, right? So still it is much higher than the current levels.
Almost double
Yeah.
than the current levels.
Yeah. So that way the growth is there both. Given the base on the international side is little lower currently, 15 to 20% है, उसमें आपको growth ज़्यादा दिखेगा, which is again getting reflected in the
Sure.
order inflow as well.
Sure. तो अभी the government has targeted कि 26 तक, if I'm not wrong, 2025, 2026 तक 20% ethanol blending should be complete. So, and you said roughly 50, 60, 70% market share है प्राग का in this space. So, we think कि up to 10,000 crore का target जो है वो achieve तो 2026 तक ही हो सकता है. Is that so? Yeah, it will take a larger amount of time to achieve that 10,000 crore mark का target.
So यहाँ पे दो चीजें हैं. 10,000 करोड़ जो है वो प्राज का रेवेन्यू टारगेट उन्होंने रखा है. बेसिकली 3 times what they have achieved in FY24, which is coming roughly around 10,000 crores. एंड जो आप इथेनॉल ब्लेंडिंग का टारगेट बोल रहे हैं वो गवर्नमेंट का टारगेट है. बायो एनर्जी जो सेगमेंट है, जैसे मैं बता रहा था कि एक मॉलिक्यूल पे डिपेंडेंट नहीं है, 1G इथेनॉल पे डिपेंडेंट नहीं है. देयर आर अदर लीवर्स टू इट. हमने बात नहीं की, बट CBG है जो एक अपकमिंग अपॉर्चुनिटी है. CBG इज बेसिकली कंप्रेस्ड बायोगैस प्लांट्स, which again Praj is one of the only Indian companies which have commercial operational plant on 3 different feedstocks, namely press mud, spent wash and rice straw. तो ये जो plants है वो incrementally I think capex आएगा इस segment में, and which will help the near term 3 to 5 years revenue. Ethanol blending का जो है I think we are at the fag end of capex in that side.
Okay.
Because as you rightly said 25-26 में we'll reach E20 and वहाँ पे capex में थोड़ा एक ठहराव सा आएगा.
Okay.
Now what would be the second leg of ethanol expansion production, this facility expansion? That would be say blending in diesel, which we highlighted, which we touched upon in our earlier conversation, right? That can be incremental opportunity. अगर हम हिसाब देखें एक diesel consumption vis-a-vis petrol consumption, we consume around 2.5 to 3x of the petrol consumption.
Correct.
That is, diesel consumption is that higher. So even if we're talking about 5% blending in diesel, that is itself would create an opportunity which is nearly E15 in terms of petrol.
So फिर तो 10,000 का revenue target seems to be little conservative. वही मैं बोल रहा था, जो 2020 तक है, and since Praj is a major player, तो उसका target तो बहुत जल्दी achieve हो जाएगा.
No, I don't think so, because what has happened is that, as I said, different molecules are at different stages of commercial operation.
Okay.
So ethanol blending with diesel is not that easy. It is kind of work in progress currently, because the way ethanol is homogeneous with petrol, वो easily घुल मिल जाता है पेट्रोल के साथ. But if it fructifies, then maybe they kind of achieve their target before it. But it is a maybe currently.
So what are some of the challenges that can come in terms of commercialization of these different products? And is Praj ready in terms of infra, in terms of technological capability for these new molecules or new products?
बहुत सारे इन्वेस्टर्स हमें ये सेम क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं कि as we are reaching the peak of capex in EBP program,
Yeah.
जो CBG के challenges हैं. So predominantly couple of challenges for CBG is availability of feedstock. What company is doing to navigate that is they are kind of building upon adding new feedstocks. Again मैं आपको अगर FY24 के annual report में ले जाऊँ, वहाँ there they have mentioned that Napier grass is again one feedstock which they are working on, and they are confident that that can be used as a feedstock for CBG production. So what the company is trying to do is that they are trying to solve those problems which are coming as a roadblocks in capex for CBG plants. So that is what the attempt is. So that is there.
So अभी just to a follow up question, अभी recent government के जो mandates हैं उनमें CNG और PNG में CBG का मिक्स करना या CBG को इनकॉर्पोरेट करना, ये एक इम्पॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट हो गया है. So how does Praj plan to capitalize on that?
So on CBG front, what Praj does is that similar to ethanol, they do not manufacture the molecule. What they do is that they set up the facility.
Correct.
They provide the technology, and they ensure that the projects are kind of accretive in terms of return profile for the customer. That is their focus. So here also what they do is that they will not do a direct tie-up with an OMC to produce CBG. As of now, it is not the case. In future, maybe the company might explore that opportunity. Currently, they don't do it. So currently what happens is that they have clients. उनके पास clients हैं जो CBG plants डालते हैं, and they have a tie-up with the OMC to supply the CBG. Recently, last to last quarter, they have indicated कि उनको एक 500 करोड़ का order मिला है with one of the large private conglomerate, जो 500 करोड़ का order मिला है 5 CBG plants. Okay. And I believe this will continue. So this will become a recurring phenomena in future, similar to what currently we have on EBP program, the ethanol orders. This will continue on the CBG front as well in times to come.
So CBG will also soon become one of the big revenue drivers for Praj going ahead.
Absolutely. और आपके दर्शकों को थोड़ा आइडिया है तो मैं आपको थोड़ा नंबर्स देता हूँ इसमें. You touched upon the CBG blending program,
Yeah.
right? So if we are supposed to reach 5% CBG blending program by 2029, estimated capex or the plants we need is around 750 plants, CBG plants. Okay. To give you the idea to आपको ये क्या opportunity है, currently in India would be somewhere in the range of hundreds. We are not even close.
Okay.
Right. So this incremental 750 plants के लिए we would need a capex of around 37,500 crores.
Okay.
In next say 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
Right. Now Praj would not be as dominant player in CBG as similar to ethanol, where they have a market share of 50-60%, but at least it will be a top quartile player in terms of technology provider, in terms of end-to-end solutions, right? So that is a big opportunity, 37,500 crores, especially when we compare the current order book of around 4,000 crores. So your audience can gauge how big the opportunity Praj is looking at in next 5 years.
37,500 crores का तो capex है that the companies will do.
Right.
Out of that, if let's say Praj का क्या TAM होगा? What would be the TAM for Praj on that? So what's the general breakup like from a capex to a revenue conversion for Praj?
Okay, so similar to 1G ethanol, there would be clients which would do pick and choose, and there would be also a set of clients we would give the whole complete turnkey project.
Yeah.
जो मैंने आपको 5 ऑर्डर के बताया वो कंप्लीट एंड टू एंड सोल्यूशन है, एंड टू एंड मेकिंग है प्राज के, तो वो 100% एड्रेसेबल हो गया प्राज के लिए. बट इफ यू आस्क मी व्हाट कैन बी द ब्रॉड रेंज इन टर्म्स ऑफ market addressable market share for Praj, I think it would be roughly between from say 30 to 100%. So if it's a turnkey project, end-to-end solution, it would be 100% of that order. If the only certain technology and knowledge is required from Praj side, certain engineering work is required from Praj side, it would be roughly around 30%. So we can say the addressable market तकरीबन 30% से 100% तक हो सकती है. So roughly it can be from 10,000 crores to 37,500 crores.
So that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
But that's a long-term play.
So it has started trickling in, but वो consistency नहीं आई है in terms of CBG order inflow. वो we are expecting in say 6-12 months, 18 months time that would can be a recurring feature.
Revenue के बारे में तो हम लोगों ने बात कर ली, but ये CBG में what about the margins? Are the margins profile as accretive as in the 1G, 2G blending? Are they lower, expected to be higher?
The thing with Praj is that they have always been conscious on the return on the investment what they do, which is reflected even in times जब capex नहीं हो रहा था, domestic capex cycle downturn में थी. In last 10 years, if you see, they have always been conscious on the return profile. So आपका ROE, ROCE, which is what investors look at, has always been impressive for Praj. So obviously, other different projects would have different margin profile. CBG, I think, would be a decent blended margin. It would not be as good as international orders, but I don't believe that कि CBG orders आने के बाद margin profile will deteriorate. So they would be in line with what company has been kind of generating.
Roughly around 8 to 10% mark is something we can expect.
That is roughly what they will be doing, because below those margins, Praj doesn't even take orders. So they kind of like to maintain those margins.
Sure. So अभी just would also want to know, अपने इतना market share और के बारे में बात करें 50, 60, 65%. Okay. So बाकी 30-35% कौन players हैं जिसे प्राज को compete कर रहा है प्राज, and how are they playing a catch-up game? Are they improving? What does the competitive landscape look like?
Different products में different competition levels है. जो आप market share की बात कर रहे थे 50 to 60%, वो it was for domestic ethanol production. Internationally मैंने जैसे आपको बताया 10% is the market share they have. Now, what is the competition on the 1G ethanol front? Predominantly on the listed space, unfortunately, we do not have much competition for Praj. What we have is a fragmented, unorganized market for 1G ethanol. But for CBG, I think there is good amount of competition. The competition is little higher. Players like Thermax hai, GPS Renewables hai. Those kind of competitions are there in CBG.
They are domestic players.
Yeah.
And internationally?
Internationally, we have not seen much on the order inflow front internationally. But domestic में ये दो predominantly सुनने में आते हैं. For other products like SAF, we do not have any material orders on SAF, so we do not know much on a domestic front how that would shape up, because वो एक futuristic project है. 2G ethanol की जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि 4 प्रोजेक्ट में से 3 प्रोजेक्ट प्राज कर रही है. So we can safely assume that they will again kind of dominate on that space as well.
Yeah. Praj के side पे, in terms of R&D, in terms of innovation, क्या spends रहता है?
So ये आपने एक अच्छा सवाल पूछ लिया, because बहुत सारे इन्वेस्टर्स ये पॉइंट मिस करते हैं, बहुत सारे लोग ये नहीं भी जानते हैं कि प्राज फॉर ओवर द इयर्स हमेशा एक पोर्शन ऑफ देयर रेवेन्यूज दे कीप ऑन स्पेंडिंग ऑन R&D, एंड दैट स्पेंड has been independent of the macro factors, whether the business is up, whether it is down, order inflow कैसा है. अगर मैं आपको कुछ numbers दूं, if you see last 8 years, consistently Praj has been spending around 1% of their revenues. There have been few years where the expense has been higher of their revenues. जैसे last year, FY24 में, their capex as a percentage of R&D capex as a percentage of revenues was around 2%. Which is very high, and their revenue expenditure as a percentage of revenues was around 1%. So total R&D expense was nearly 3%, which is very good, and that has also helped Praj in keep on adding more and more products in their pipeline, right? अगर उनका employee base भी देखें, आप annual report देखें, उसमें से you will find कि 90 से ज़्यादा लोग उनके पास scientist हैं, which are working in this R&D lab, and which प्लस व्हाट हैपन्स इज दैट जो उनके प्रमोटर है प्रमोद चौधरी, वो सालों से बायो एनर्जी पे, सालों से डिफरेंट फीड स्टॉक्स पे काम करते आ रहे हैं. ही हैज़ बीन नोन एज अ टेक्नोक्रेट, एंड ही हैज़ डन वेरी गुड जॉब इन दैट फ्रंट. एंड व्हाट वी बिलीव इज दैट दे हैव ऑल्सो इंडिकेटेड दैट कि उनके पास काफ़ी बड़ा डेटा बेस है इन टर्म्स ऑफ फीड स्टॉक. सो दैट ऑल्सो हेल्प्स देम इन डूइंग देयर वेरियस R&D वर्क प्लस डेवलपिंग न्यू प्रोडक्ट्स फॉर द क्लाइंट्स.
Something that सब इन्वेस्टर्स जानना चाहते हैं is शेयर प्राइस. लास्ट 5 साल में 5x हो गया है. लास्ट 3 months में भी काफ़ी अच्छा ग्रोथ दिखा है. आई डोंट वांट टू से अबाउट द फ्यूचर, बट व्हाट आर द रिस्क्स और व्हाट आर सम ऑफ द डेट्रीमेंट्स जो ये रॉकेट स्पीड ग्रोथ को कर्टेल कर सकता है? ये जानना ज़रूरी है. इसमें क्या लगता है आपको? व्हाट आर द फैक्टर्स दैट कुड स्लो डाउन दिस growth either in terms of revenue or in terms of share price for that matter?
तो अगर आप लास्ट 3 years 5 years का परफॉर्मेंस देखेंगे, जो शेयर प्राइस है विच इज द रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ द फंडामेंटल्स ऑफ द कंपनी। आप देखोगे तो उनके रेवेन्यू में, प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी में वही टाइप की ग्रोथ आई है। सो गिव यू सम नंबर्स, वो तक कंपनी प्राज कम से कम 1000 करोड़ से 3500 करोड़ की रेवेन्यू पे आ गई है। सो 3.5x जंप हुआ है। प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी टर्म्स में मार्जिन इंप्रूव होने के कारण वो 5 टाइम्स और मोर देन दैट उनका प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी जंप हुआ है। सो इट्स अ रिफ्लेक्शन। सो इन्वेस्टर्स को रिस्क पर्सपेक्टिव ये देखना चाहिए कि अगर देर इज अ स्लो डाउन इन टर्म्स ऑफ केपेक्स साइकिल फ्रॉम द डोमेस्टिक साइड और देर इज अ स्लो डाउन इन टर्म्स ऑफ ऑर्डर इनफ्लो,
एंड द मैनेजमेंट का ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड है कि जो गाइडेंस देता है वो अचीव कर पाता है।
So normally they refrain from giving guidance. Normally they do not give long-term guidance. So they normally refrain from giving it. But this is something which they have kind of given a long-term roadmap on which they are working on.
Okay. Excellent. Thanks a lot.
Thanks
for
a lot, Akash.
all your insights.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing. Please read the risk disclosure documents carefully before investing in equity shares, derivatives, mutual fund, and or other instruments traded on the stock exchanges.